Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm here. I'm Joe Gould. I'm with Adam, the old man, Winters. Not feeling like winter yet outside, though. And we are here to review Mad Monster Party from
Have we settled on
1967.
whether the question mark is officially part of this title or not?
So that's what I was going to start with, actually. Is I don't really understand if this is a Mad Monster Party or a Mad Monster Party. Or Mad Monster Party. Like, how are we supposed to pronounce this? The question mark appears to be part of the name after party, just for people to be clear. But you don't see it on some of the posters. It's not on the DVD art, at least my copy of it from Lionsgate. But it was on the screen. And I don't really understand why it's necessary in the first place.
I had more questions about that question mark than I had about anything else in the movie. Because are they asking us, is it really a party?
Well, there's elements of a party. They get into a food fight and they look like they drink a lot and they go to bed in pairs of twos.
A party would even just be a simple description of a group of people assembled in one place for one purpose, which they do have business meetings, or at least one of them in this movie.
Yes, they are the worldwide organization of monsters coming together for this gathering, this business retreat. Talk about the example of a business retreat and why you shouldn't have alcohol at those things.
Although I'm surprised alcohol would have such an effect on, given the condition of several of these monster party members.
Well, I did notice that frequently they would pour themselves a glass and then throw the glass without drinking it.
It's hard to animate water when you're using stop motion puppets, any kind of liquid.
Fair enough. Then don't pour it.
Really, those are some of the better looking scenes in this movie when they pour a compound or a solution into a vial. Well,
no, I agree. I like this good stuff. This is good stuff. So I had never heard of this movie before you recommended it for the podcast.
I still don't quite know what I witnessed, but I'm in favor of whatever it was. I don't quite know what I saw, but I like what I saw.
Had you seen it before?
I never finished it. It was one of my late night attempts to chug through it before I fell asleep, and I always fell asleep before I could get too deep into it.
Yeah, this movie's heavy on the Godzilla make you fall asleep effect, like the old Showa films. This is my main critique of the movie, and it was shared by Rankin.
Who was the director, by the way? Which one directed this?
Bass directed it. I think, let me see here. Rankin did the story and produced it. Then Bass directed it and did the music, or the lyrics more accurately. But the studio that distributed, Embassy Pictures, wanted it to be longer. They thought it was too short because they were going to put it in theaters. So they added some of those middle scenes, like the chef and the first plane sequence, to fluffing up the script or the runtime. Yeah. And then Rankin Bass, one of the two, decided that they thought the movie was too long. And I agree. There's a lot of fluff in the middle of this movie that does not move the plot along. And it got kind of boring in the middle. But the front 30 minutes and the last 30 minutes, I thought was awesome.
I'm a little surprised. This is not a holiday classic. I wouldn't say it's as good as Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the original, or something like that. But I'm surprised no TV stations ran this during October. Maybe it's because it's too long.
If you put this on television, it would be at least 2 hours. Probably 2.5, because this is a solid 95-minute movie. Like, you would almost you could edit it down for television to get it to the 2-hour block. Because you're going to have more than 25 minutes of commercials in a 2-hour period. I say this is a problem only in the sense of marketing, is it's not overly kid-friendly. It's not like it's explicitly for adults, but there's enough weird little things in there that if they pick up on it,
I mean,
it's a little bit
on the
awkward.
level with the Looney Tunes shorts. You're back with the Merry Melodies, as we call them. That's about on par with that, the humor and the tone.
In which those are also not on TV today.
Well, that's a studio issue.
So, I'm just saying, like, there is stuff in this movie that it doesn't explain why it didn't maintain popularity for 30 years or so, but it would explain why it's having a hard time finding popularity today in terms of rising from the ashes. Enough little innuendo was in there. You got a kid slapping a girl.
That's a major point. Hey, she's not a real girl. Oh, hold on. Spoilers, maybe. Maybe he's not a real boy. I hadn't figured that out yet. This movie really loves introducing the twist near the end of the runtime.
Yeah, it turned into, a King Kong film.
Yeah.
Didn't see that coming.
Remind me, King Kong Escapes, was that 66?
So it was actually 67
Ooh.
as well. I tried really hard to figure out how much money this movie made, and basically determined that it didn't make enough movie for anyone to write it down because I couldn't find it. And it wasn't in like the top 175 for the year. But as I was scrolling, I saw that King Kong Escapes, and it was either 2.5 or 3.5. I can't remember. They made that much $1 million. And when it was released.
And am I right that this movie received a prequel a few years later?
So maybe. And before I get to that, say the movie released in March. Who releases a Mad Monster Party flick in March? Sit on the thing till October.
Well, they were hoping for VHS sales in October, right? Well, they didn't have that market yet. 67.
So it had a. I only read this on the wiki, so I don't know anything else about this. But there was a TV special in 1972, September at least, of Mad Monsters, and it was apparently part of the ABC Saturday Superstar movie series. It aired September 23rd, 1972. I didn't bother looking it up, so I'm not sure what the runtime was on that. But apparently, it did have a lot of the same actor or same monsters, and someone else did an imitation Karloff impression.
By then, Karloff.
Well, it was a different person. I can look.
This may have been one of his last screen credits, or maybe the last time he did anything Frankenstein related.
It was. He did do the Grinch. I think the Grinch was after. He died in 1969 at 81. So yeah, he wasn't around for that. So actually, the Grinch came first. Grinch was 1966.
He's a mean one. So Boris Karloff is the headline actor for this movie, but the real star is the guy who went by the screen named Alan Swift. Did I get that right? He did just about everybody who wasn't female in this movie.
Yeah, he did all the male monsters, basically. There's really only like 4 or 5 voices in this film. You have Boris Karloff, you have Alan Swift, you have Gail Burnett as Francesca, Phyllis Diller. Is she still alive? I think everyone else is dead. Phyllis Diller is the monster's mate. I'm not sure if she's still alive. Really actually not familiar with her at all. And then Ethel Ennis.
I remember her from the Scooby-Doo movies episode where they made jokes about all her deceased husbands. I don't know if you watched that one. Phyllis Diller.
Okay. I wonder if Karloff is one of them. He had 6 wives.
Yeah, impressive. Think of all the payments, alimony. That's why he's still working.
Yeah. So from looking at the featurette that came on the DVD about the making of the movie, 2 people to give props to is Jack Davis, who did most of the character design work, and then Don Duga, who made the storyboard from the script. Unfortunately, both of them have passed away.
The Jack, who did the designs again? So he's Jack one of the Davis. Reasons I believe this is called Mad Monster Party, as in the Mad magazine connection.
Yes, and I think they kind of made the characters, not obviously they didn't look like Mad Magazine necessarily, but they had the large heads and the skinny legs, and you could see a little bit of how that, you can see a little bit of resemblance there.
A caricature style that was made so famous by Mad.
Yeah. And these puppets are really awesome. Apparently they cost like $5,000 each in 1967. Ooh. But like the mouths are great. You can make smiles, not smiles, the eyes moved. Like
the only one that really let me down was probably the so-called werewolf. Not because he didn't look good, but nothing moved on him, really.
Yeah, I think they struggled with the animation on that. Just for whatever reason, the wolf movement, it just wasn't as smooth as
I was impressed by the Invisible Man effect. I imagine that would be hard to do in stop motion.
Yeah, so there was another feature on the DVD where they spoke. It was basically a little mini lesson in how to do stop motion. And their theory on how they did this, and they don't know for sure, is that there was in like a circle with some wires hanging down above the camera shot, and you would just adjust the wires to make it move around. And I guess it's pretty standard fare in animatronics. And they basically do the same. Well, this DVD was made 15 years ago, but it doesn't sound like they've changed much, other than the actual filming. Instead of having it on film, they can make digital shots, which makes editing a lot easier, obviously. So, not sure how to tackle this particular one, but you almost want to tell people just go watch the movie.
It deserves more recognition.
It does. It does. It's thin on plot. So, scientist Baron Boris von Frankenstein, they open up and he has achieved his greatest success. He has created a weapon of mass destruction, the WMD, that would make worms proud, the video game, and it can destroy any and all matter.
That violates the 1789 law of the conservation of matter or mass, which says that matter cannot be created nor destroyed, merely transferred from one state to another, whether it be an ash or smoke or compound.
They go out of their way to say matter.
Has an odd way of testing this, I will say. The Baron does.
Yes. Well, and I'd like to think that this Baron is a descendant of the Hammer films Frankenstein, and that's why he's so far advanced in these different types of things.
Well, it's a very contemporary film, right? Because the castle is in the Caribbean, is on a Caribbean island, and I guess it's modern day for the time. Is the only impression I get.
Yeah. Now, did they even know what matter was in 1967?
Well, if they knew what it was in 1789, I'm pretty sure they knew what it was in 1967.
Do we even know what it is now?
Now you're getting all philosophical on me. It is quite a discovery and a twist on the Frankenstein mythos. He's always supposed to be obsessed with creating life out of nothing, even though that's arguable that he never did that in the Hammer films. But now he wants to simply destroy, as in take something and make it nothing. Frankenstein wants to completely turn modern physics on its head, and modern chemistry and all that. And once he's invented it, all he wants to do is retire. And what was his motivation then? The matter-destroying formula. I guess it's like the anti-life equation for dark side equivalent.
Yeah, they never expressed what his plan was.
Yeah.
I think he was happy just to have it. This is not like a real evilish Frankenstein. He runs the worldwide organization of monsters, but he's got more of a working man philosophy of just work harder than everyone else, so you're always 2 steps ahead. They even have a song about it, and so it's not real clear what his plan. Maybe he's just going to let his descendant decide. So speaking of creating, he resides in his castle with Frankenstein's monster, which is for whatever reason called Fang.
Affectionately.
Don't understand that one. Yeah. He has no sharp teeth, for the record. And then he's got his mate, who's not called the Bride of Frankenstein for copyright reasons.
Phyllis Diller.
And they also have Francesca living, who's his assistant, secretary, whatever you want to call her, who we believe at this point just to be a beautiful redhead living in the castle. And, you don't know if there's any side benefits or not.
Yeah.
So, and then he's got a creepy dude. What's his name?
Yetch.
Yelch. Yeah. Yetch is Sketch. And he's always making moves on Francesca and trying to touch her. And he's creeping on her. And she smacks him quite a bit in this movie. But anyways, he tells Francesca that he's going to retire and give all his secrets to his nephew, Felix Flanken. And she's not happy about this. And that leads to a lot of chaos and food fights later in the movie.
I guess that's the plot, that she's not happy about Frankenstein's succession plan.
Yeah,
and even then, it doesn't hold that same plot the whole way through.
Oh, no, there's quite a few turns. And then, so again, he is head of the worldwide organization of monsters, so he needs to step down from that role. That's really what he's retiring from. So he sends out, not pigeons, but crows to deliver an invitation to all the monsters to come to the island for a big party. And it's going to include, see here, Count Dracula, the Mummy, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Werewolf, the Invisible Man, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and the Creature, which is from the Black Lagoon, but that's not said out loud.
And he has the most different design of any of the Universal monsters.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's on purpose. They didn't have a lot of options to work with. No plausible deniability,
the
so to
Fang
speak.
Frankenstein's monster is a lot closer than I would have thought they could have gotten legally.
Yeah, maybe that's why they went with the outlandish name. And my understanding also is that they modeled the mate after Gail Garnett. Or not,
Yeah.
not Gail. Phyllis
Again,
Diller.
to avoid an obvious copyright problem.
Yeah. And then there's one monster not invited, simply described
which I
as
thought
it.
was a reference to all the old black and white movies. It came from beneath the sea. It came from outer space. It was not a reference to those.
No. But apparently this monster had been a problem in the past.
Well, what did they say he did at the last get-together?
They said he was a crushing boar, and they meant that literally. He crushed the island's wild boars in his bare hands.
Those things are rough and dangerous.
So we're introduced to Felix. And he's a pharmacist.
He works in a pharmacy. Drugstore. He
And
works
he's
in a drugstore.
Yeah, he's a pharmacist. Yeah, and I think in the introduction of him, I saw the next inappropriate thing for a children's movie. This guy's a pill popper. He's taking random pills in the pharmacy.
They had a nice little transition of him just mixing chemicals and then drinking the whole.
I have no idea. He makes his own pharmaceutical drugs, and he looks like he's 10. So he gets to his invitation, and he begs for a week off. He hadn't had a week off in 3 years, but he also is not getting any paychecks because he damages and eats so many of the pills.
They said he's 2 weeks in the hole at the moment from getting paid. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, and he drops a bunch of stuff, and basically the Cronkite says, take your vacation, but just know you're not the one that's really on vacation. It's really me. So I don't have to deal with you.
He's not a great employee. Just because somebody has the helpful, can-do, will-do attitude does not make them a great employee.
No. So he takes a boat over to the island, and this boat's also going to have a lot of the monsters get on board with it. It's a short scene. They do some gaffes where you have Felix come face to face with the different monsters, but through his own obliviousness, not realize any of them are monsters. But it manages to get the plot where they're all there. And
don't you think it's odd that none of the monsters seem to realize they're on the boat with each other except for the Hunchback and the Mummy because they boarded simultaneously?
I didn't think much about that. I just assumed they all knew they were on it.
Because when Dracula and the werewolf, show up at the castle at the same time, they act like they're just seeing each other.
No, I think you're right. No, I didn't catch that the first time. So I think the monster I liked the most, which was introduced in these scenes, was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I love that they, 10 years before it happened, basically ripped off what would become the Bill Bixby Lou Ferrigno transformation.
Dr. Jekyll, he's got a bit of a sugar stick with him. We're going to get on to Felix for doing some questionable ingestion there.
Yeah, they did some dealing on the boat.
They did interact. Yeah, Felix and Dr. Jekyll. And Felix thought he wanted to play a game of hide and seek. So he jumped in the lifeboat and waited all night. Then he decided he was finally going to go to bed.
Felix really is an idiot. But
I don't know how much of a brain he has.
Yeah, screw loose. They get to the castle, and the only one not there at this point is Felix. Because the monsters have all jumped ship and basically swam or taken a little small boat.
Invisible Man did it naked. Oh my goodness.
And now Felix would eventually take his own little boat to get there because the ship captain didn't want to go all the way to shore. But apparently they bartered about that for a while because he missed the first night.
How much do you think the captain lost? He lost 2 lifeboats in that whole deal. Do you think that was worth the price of the voyage to him?
I don't know, because not a lot of people paid.
Yeah, he wanted to extort Dracula because he looked like a rich man because of his dress. And Dracula decided he was going to fly on the boat. And Wolfman snuck on, werewolf or whatever. So the Hunchback was posing as a crew member, loading luggage for the Mummy.
Posing's a strong word. I don't think he knew what he was doing, but yes.
I guess Felix paid. Yeah.
No, he got off free. No, they thought he was another monster, and they just let him on board.
Man,
don't hurt us.
That's a bad deal.
They're basically like, don't show us whatever power you got. We don't want to see it.
He wanted $100 out of Dracula. I'm assuming he got nothing. And he lost 2 lifeboats out of the deal.
Yeah, his little mate there might have lost a few years off his life. He was scared silly.
They said the rest of the crew had jumped ship. Was it because of Mr. Hyde, maybe?
I'm not sure. They didn't show Hyde coming on the boat. But I think they did allude that he'd scared off.
So they said they picked him up in London.
Yeah. So they all get there, and they have a big dinner, and Frankenstein shows them the formula, and he tells them that the next day he will let them know who his successor is going to be. And we have Francesca starting to get this pact going with Dracula, promising to share the secrets. On the back end, they just got to take out Felix. And at the same time, you have Fang and the mate, who are kind of overhearing some things, coming up with the same idea, and Francesca's thinking too loud.
Is that a power women have? They can tell when somebody is thinking too loud?
I'm not sure. But ultimately, they catch them eavesdropping, and the mate and Francesca get into a cat
The
fight
clothes come
with
off.
cat noises. Yeah, Francesca's outer layer comes off. Nothing too revealing underneath. And then ultimately, this leads to a giant food fight where everyone gets drunk at the end and wakes up in pairs.
And Felix is there for none of this. He's still on the boat, sleeping.
Yeah. For whatever reason. And that's when Felix gets to the island, and he's greeted by his uncle and Francesca, and who ultimately will take Felix for a tour of the island with a plan of the mummy, werewolf, and Dracula to attack, because there was 3 good spots. And through his own bumbling, he manages to survive.
Dracula looks like a fool in all this.
But absolutely.
Count Chocula would have had better luck against Felix than Dracula.
Yeah. And then at this point, Frankenstein, at some point he tells Felix about his retirement. And he tells him he wants to make him leader of all the monsters of the world. But Felix just doesn't seem like this job's
He
the right
thinks he
fit
has
for
it too
him.
good back at the drugstore.
Yeah. And he seems a little uneasy about the idea of leading a bunch of evil monsters. But he does say he'll think about it. And he asks if he can go fishing. That's how he thinks about it. We get a nice little song's a strong word. But you get Boris Karloff reciting the lyrics while music's playing with some weird little creatures walking around, about how important it is to study hard and be 2 steps ahead.
That song almost lost me. It's a lot of visual delight, but it just, about put me to sleep. I said, I didn't need this at this point in the movie.
Dracula meets with Francesca, and he says, I'll take care of it. And then we realize that he's double-crossing her with the monster, with Frankenstein's monster and the bride/mate. And Francesca slides down a secret hatch to get away.
Now it's not a secret.
And they don't follow her immediately. So she ends up down in the laboratory, and she sends out a messenger bat to an unknown recipient, but I think we all know who it really is. And then she starts looking through the research, looking for the formula. And at some point, they get the bright idea, we have to catch her before she gets to the Baron. Let's just go down the chute. And they go down the chute, and they catch her. Or they try to catch her, at least.
She chooses the crocodiles over the vampires.
Yeah. So she jumps out the window, lands in the moat. It's the same moat, though, that Felix is fishing, and she gets he helps her get in the boat, and they don't get eaten by, what do they call it?
Well, it's either alligators or crocodiles. I don't remember which one.
So she gets real emotional and real upset with Felix. I hate you. Everything was going great until you came around. Chest. And out of nowhere, he calms her down by slapping her.
Hysterical.
And she instantly falls in love.
Madly. And they start making out, I guess.
Well, initially, I think he's not quite following, and he thinks she has allergies.
I thought he had asthma.
Yeah. And then we get a song where she says, "Never was a love like mine for
I didn't
for
need
you."
that. It's like...
Oh, yeah, this is what it was. So, yeah, she instantly loves him. He asks her if she's parched and tingling all over. And when she says yes, he's like, "Oh, I'm like that too. I have the allergies." And he gives her an allergy pill.
What a brain. What a brain that Felix.
So she sings him a song. I think he gets the message by the end. And she says, "We gotta get off this island. I've invited it. We gotta go. I got a secret boat. Let's go to the boat."
She can't run, though.
No, they are not very good at running.
Maybe it's the shoes she was wearing. She collapses onto the ground, and he can still go, but he does admit to being tired later on with chopping down with a...
Yeah, I think he grabbed Dracula's machete at some point.
The machete chop.
But getting ahead of ourselves. So, yeah, they stop to catch their breath. She ends up getting grabbed by a plant.
The Little Shop of Horrors.
So he overfills it with allergy pills, and it falls asleep, and it saved her life. And then he said, "Don't thank me, thank my pills." And then she gives him a big kiss. And he says, "Don't thank my pills, thank me." And this is where they get caught by the other monsters. So at that point, he pulls out this vial of medicine, I guess from his pharmacy. All the other monsters mistake it for the weapon of mass destruction. And they start freaking out. He's getting himself all brave. But then they're not freaking out at some point because of him, but because of it, which is rising from the water behind him.
Oh, it's a big it.
And at that point, the movie turns into
You
a King
know the
Kong
name.
movie.
You know the fame. King Kong. This is a big Kong, too.
Yeah.
There's a point shortly after he appears where he is standing in the moat, however deep that is, and he is still about as tall as the top of Castle Frankenstein.
Yeah, so the monsters run away. Kong pursues. Eventually, they get to the castle. He knocks part of the castle down, and then he finds Francesca, and ultimately he gets Francesca in one hand and all the monsters in his other hand. And he's standing on top of a mountain.
Very Kong-like, going to the highest place he can find.
Yeah, if there was a skyscraper on this island, he would have been on it. They could have had him stand on the castle.
I guess he thought this was a date because Francesca wrote him, and maybe she included a picture of herself in that letter.
I don't know, but obviously they had to continue to rip off Kong and his fascination with, though in this case, not a blonde, but a pretty little white girl.
Yeah. Dracula said she was his type. O negative. I thought that was a funny little quip there.
Yeah, everyone in this movie likes Francesca.
Yeah, that's fair. Closest thing you got is Phyllis Diller, Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah, she seems taken. So Felix is sad. He's emotional. He says, "If I can't save her, I will just kill myself instead." Always a nice line for a children's movie. Yep. But then Uncle Boris comes up. He says, "Don't do that." He says, "I wasn't serious. I didn't think I had an audience."
I just say stuff to say it. Hear myself talk.
Yeah. So Boris says, "You're out of your league, kid. Go get in the boat and wait for me. I got a plan." And he gets him and all his little hotel ushers in their fighter planes. And we have a recreation, at least initially, of the final scene from King Kong. We have the planes flying around Kong, and Boris convinces Kong to put Francesca down and take him instead, basically. And he obliges, and Francesca swims over to Felix's boat and gets in, and then they go back to Boris, and he just has I would say, if he was given a lecture, he would say, "It's not that I'm angry with you. I'm just disappointed with all the things that have taken place." And he sets off his weapon of mass destruction.
Which
boom,
presumably leaves nothing behind. So that whole island is presumably no longer existing.
Yes.
It's kind of a lame explosion, considering how big a deal this was built up to be. I'd say it's even less impressive than the stock footage mushroom cloud from the opening of the film.
Yeah, so they, Harley's looking at me. She's like, "Why are you making weird noises, Dad?" And, so we get a little fireworks show, and Felix says something inappropriate, I think about wanting to sing a patriotic song.
Auld Lang Syne, it's the New Year's song. He wants to sing that.
Okay. So they don't seem real sad anyways about Boris's departure as the monster, King Kong, all the monster party, and Boris, and the island. They no longer matter, so to speak.
Good, that's good.
Yeah. And instead of being sad, he gets real excited. He says, "Oh, we can go back home to my island of misfit toys, and we can get married and have children."
Got a plan.
And Francesca is real sad. She's real sad.
Turns out she was a creation of the Baron. She's basically a fembot before we had that term, thanks to the Austin Powers movies. So I guess she's an android. She's something that looks human, but is all mechanical underneath.
Yeah. She has a spring that unwinds and no heart. She's basically a toy that will wear out. Her elbows will rust. But, Felix takes it in stride. And he says, and I think this is a quote, "None of us are perfect. Are perfect. Are perfect. Are perfect."
And his neck seems to be stuck in a loop as well when he's saying that. So, what have we learned?
Well, it's quite unexpected and really makes the movie a lot more confusing.
That's the question mark. What was this?
Yeah. So it appears that Boris made him as well, which creates a whole bunch of other rabbit holes. Like, is he her brother?
You remember his family lineage? The Baron Frankenstein said that Felix was the offspring of his younger sister, who turned out to be the white sheep of the family, even though she had a gift for witchcraft. And she met a pharmacist in Transylvania, and they moved to the States. So Boris probably doesn't know the circumstances of young Felix's origin.
Well, I don't get the feeling that she had a robotics background.
Witchcraft? And who knows what kind of pharmacist we're dealing with here. whatever Felix's dad would have been.
Well, he doesn't appear to be an organic robot. He appears to be a mechanical one based off his springy little neck at the end.
Or maybe he was just
I don't know.
faking it.
It's obviously meant to be open-ended.
Maybe he was just faking it to make the lady feel better.
I don't know. I think he is Boris's robot with implanted memories. I don't know. It's what makes she has self-awareness. He does not appear to unless he's hiding.
Maybe
it the whole time.
Maybe
Which
Boris
is possible
forgot that he helped build Felix because he calls him human at various points in the movie.
No, it's let's just say there was no sequel to this movie, so we don't really know. So one thing that we should cover before in case we wrap up, are the music and the themes. So the opening theme song I thought was fine. They basically were ripping off, was it Goldfinger?
Yeah, it is very James Bondy.
Yeah. So you have 5 sing-alongs in the movie, and I think they're growing on me a little bit, but I thought the music songs in this movie were just really out of place for the characters.
They don't move the plot forward for me, really, any of them. It's just sort of a timeout.
No. And the whole point of these songs in the Rankin Bass films is they try to find a natural spot where they want the song to advance the plot. Like that's like their whole point. And they'll find suitable ones, and then they'll work the scene out to where it kind of works out. And they were just kind of boring. These are the songs that would put you to sleep
times to me. Yeah.
while you're trying to watch this movie. Yeah. And then we get Our Time to Shine by Gail Garnett, which is a duet between Dracula
I like that
and
one.
Francesca. And I like the song, but it just seemed weird. It's like they were doing something heroic.
Yeah, because I guess the way...
When in reality, they're going to kill a kid and take over the family business.
So I guess the way Francesca looks at it, she's the faithful employee, actually creation, and she did not get the promotion she believed she deserved due to nepotism. So she's got to take the bull by the horns and do what's right, and maybe convince the League of Monsters it's the best thing for their future interest as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of my problem with these, and this is where the tone comes in, is they don't sound like Halloween songs. We get One Step Ahead by Boris Karloff.
I'll rip that off later.
Who doesn't really sing. Yeah. He just talks. I do think that this song furthered the story. Yeah. But it distracted you with all the weird stuff going on that had nothing to do with the story. And then you have probably the best one was Gail Garnett's Never Was a Love Like Mine.
She's an actual singer too, the actress. She's done several recordings.
Yeah. But it definitely furthered the story. They had some neat little visual effects. When you read about people, the people complain about the music in this movie and the scenes, but they all say that one was good. But yeah, mixed bag on the music. And it never got a release. Even though it was advertised in the credits as being a soundtrack available on RCA Victor, they never produced a soundtrack in any format. It didn't get released until September of 1998. Percepto put it on CD, but then Waxworks Records put it on vinyl in 2016.
Yeah, I saw that note on the RCA Music. I figured it got a vinyl, but I guess it had to wait for a long time.
Yeah, and maybe it was just a reaction to the music in the movie. No one liked it, but it probably works better as a vinyl, honestly, than it does watching it on film.
When do you play it? Because it's not particularly Halloween music, and you've got a vinyl record called Mad Monster Party. When do you put that on?
Well, it's got the question mark. You're asking the questions. You're asking the right questions. Do you have any other thoughts about the movie?
It is funny. Rankin Bass was cooperating on 2 different King Kong projects in the same year. And I remarked when we were watching King Kong Escapes, I would have liked to have seen their take on a stop-motion King Kong. And we at least got it here.
What do you think Toho thought of this movie?
Do we know if it was ever released in Japan? Huh.
Yeah, it released August 3rd in Japan.
I imagine it'd been a hit in Japan. I don't know what Toho would have thought. We finally... You could argue that Monster from Hell was already this, but we got our Frankenstein King Kong crossover in this movie.
We did. They made the movie that wasn't made.
So one thing, it left me sad when all the monsters were dematerialized. Who in the world is going to ring the bell in the Notre Dame Cathedral? Because all these monsters were just doing their own thing, and they get invited to a party. and they don't make it back.
Well, I think the Phantom of the Opera is just going to have to step up his game.
He might. He's in Paris, right? The Phantom?
I think so.
Paris or London, I don't recall. The old opera house.
So who would be left? We have the Phantom. We'd have a real Wolfman running around somewhere. We would have a bunch of female vampires.
What about Nosferatu? Do we give him a different status than Dracula? He's public domain.
I don't know. He's kind of been AWOL for like the last 100 years.
You can always have a Nosferatu.
Yeah.
There'd always be a variety of zombies in series. Hey, so the one thing we got to keep in mind, too, is the extraterrestrial monsters. They could still be around. And there was that one Universal movie I never saw, but it inspired one of their Ninja Turtle crossovers. I think they just called it The Mutant. I never saw that Universal. It was a sci-fi Universal movie.
Well, speaking of weird creatures, next week, I think we got Ernest Scared Stupid. Is that what we picked? And I think it's the way to go. Ernest Scared Stupid as we get into our little mini Halloween series.
Oh, wow. Maybe we should do the prequel to this one, if we can find it.
Yeah, we'll have to see if we can find that.
There is a YouTube upload. It seemed to be pretty good quality. I just pulled it up, but I have to get into that.
Okay. All right. Well, Mad Monster Party ? What shall we use?
Yeah.
Pills? How many pills? What? Felix pop?
I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 pills.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4 out of 5 as well. If it hadn't had the meandering middle 30 minutes, then I would probably give it 5, honestly. All right. Well, with that, hope you all have a creepy Halloween season, and
Bye-bye.
See you next time.